when Joe invited me, I kind of was thinking about what exactly I wanted to talk about. And I kind of looked back from my career and ultimately what led me up to this point of where I've now built Patient Partner. And it's really revolving around how can I help patients go through the healthcare journey? And a lot of the healthcare journey is really revolved around patient selection, and it's a different type of selection that most people are used to. And I'll explain that later. And then also adherence. I think that's really important. A lot of patients get discouraged. And how can we really support patients throughout these healthcare journeys? But to kind of talk a little bit about myself, so I am the CEO of Patient Partner, but I want to kind of start backwards and I'll move forward. But I actually come from the industry. I spent majority of my career as a medical device sales rep, out of all things. So I worked for Arthrex, Smith & Nephew, ACell, and it was.
You met Alyssa in one of those three places?
No, I actually didn't. I met Alyssa with Patient Partner. And a lot of what we do with Patient Partners work with industry. That's really who our clients are. Our customers is mainly med device and pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately how I got connected with her. But it was interesting. A lot of what I was experiencing as a rep led me to the curation of what Patient Partner is. And what that really was is, as a rep, like I had like a really good grip on all of the physicians I was working with here in San Diego. And I felt really like an insider. I mean, it was really nice. Like anytime I got sick, my family got sick, I never went to a doctor. I just like called one of the doctors I worked with and said, hey, can you prescribe me X, Y, and Z? And having that level of relationship, I think, is very tough to get as the layman person. And so, but what was really fascinating is about 5 years ago, my wife got diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and all of my connections from surgery really had no correlation to oncology. And so I did feel like the everyday patient.
I have to ask, how's your wife?
Oh, she's fine. I've always kind of missed that part, but
yeah.
No, she's doing great. And we're about to have another baby here in about a month. So
yeah. And that'll make baby number
3.
Wow. And tell us, I'm inquisitive, sorry.
Yeah.
How old and what have you got and what are you expecting?
So I have a 7-year-old boy. She's about to be 4 in 2 days, 4-year-old girl. And then we're having another boy in about February, I think like 21st, I think is the due date.
Good luck. Thank you.
My life is pretty busy. But what was fascinating with this experience though was, I was trying to figure out how I can support my wife. How can I really kind of be there? What was this next 2 years going to look like? And during this time as a rep, I actually got called into clinic one day with one of my doctors. And he's like, George, can you explain to a patient what a knee replacement was? I was like, yeah, sure. So I'm in the consult room, walking them through the knee replacement, and the patient's like, George, that's great and all. Doc, I'm really scared and nervous about this procedure. And what would be really helpful is, do you have like a past knee replacement patient that I can speak with? And that was a big light bulb moment for me, because it was actually in that time, like I need this exact thing with my wife in oncology. So I called the oncologist and they were able to connect us with another family kind of similar to us. And it was so beyond helpful that it really inspired me to create Patient Partner. And so to kind of speak to your initial question, Joe, which is like, how far along are we? So I initially started Patient Partner back in about 2017, 2018. And truthfully, I went through about, I would say 5 or 6 pivots before I really nailed the business model. And then I went out and fundraised in 2020. And we've only raised once. We've raised $3 million so far. And this is your first raise? Correct. Yeah.
Either you have very rich friends or you're really good at it.
I mean, I am so thankful for our investors, and I have an incredible relationship with them. We've gone through a lot of ups and downs as far as the business goes, and they've been really supportive. But we really I think we had a lot of things working for us when we went out and raised capital that allowed us to go and raise the amount we did with, we were just 2 or 3 dudes kind of figuring out how to do this. So yeah, I would say it was a relatively successful fundraise, and that's actually allowed us to really continue on. I mean, we're in 2023 now. We haven't raised any more capital So
it seems you have 11 folks on the team there on the bottom picture.
yeah, so we've been fluctuating a little bit. In 2021, we were up to about 18, 19 people. And then we kind of got hit hard with the market. And so we actually had to do a little bit of cutting. So I think we're down to about
These
8.
are full-time employees, not contractors.
Correct. Yeah. Full-time employees.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, we've really kind of expanded, and grown. We've had a little bit of, it's a startup, it's a business. We have ups and downs. And so in about middle of 2022, we had a pretty big down. A lot of our clients really had to like cinch up the belt. And so naturally had a trickle down effect on us. But the good news is that we're trending back upwards, which is great. And during that downtime, we focused a lot on our technology and a lot on our product, which I think is paying dividends for us now.
Take us through that. I'm curious to see what kind of revenue model you have.
Well,
But do it in order. I'm taking it out of order.
Yeah. But what I want to do is I want to walk you through a lot of the thought process I had from being a rep into actually starting Patient Partner. And it was funny, like as a rep, I was responsible for taking whatever product I was selling within this company and distributing it, making sure that it was being utilized by physicians. And I constantly asked myself these questions, which was, why don't patients know about things like this? Why is it we always have to go to a physician to educate the physician on this technology with the hopes that, one, I can either convince them to either use my product or rely on them to help educate the patient and give them a choice. And then what that actually led me to even dive deeper into, which was motivation for patients. What motivates somebody to actually seek care? And then on top of that, when a patient is thinking about seeking care, where are they going to? What research do they do? And ultimately, what is it, that tipping point that gets them to go, all right, I really have to go and seek out some sort of professional medical help. And so what I landed on, and I've done a lot of research on this, is so when I talk about patient selection, I'm doing the inverse, which is majority of patient selection. The actual definition is a physician selecting a patient for a certain therapy. Whereas I'm taking a very different approach, which is when patients select to go, I'm ready to go seek care, or how do I go and find a doctor and which doctor is right for me? Mm-hmm. And so I've kind of boiled the motivation for a health condition to roughly around 5 factors. And these are the most common. And I have tons of data to back this up. And the majority of it's actually internal within our company that we gather. But there's personal motivation. I want to be healthier. I'm doing this for me. I need to get back into a good state of health. There's clinical, which is if I don't do this, something bad's going to happen to me. Mm-hmm. If I don't do this, my quality of life will be jeopardized. Mm-hmm. A huge motivation is family and friends. I'm doing this because I want to play with my grandkids again. I want to be able to make sure I can take care of my mom. Whatever that family motive is, it's a massive driver for people to be proactive. Mm-hmm. And then this one is more of actually a detractor, which is time and convenience. I can't tell you how many people choose not to seek care because, it's just not the right time. I'm
really busy. This isn't, I get it.
Yeah. I work so much and I never, it's like basically the list of excuses. And then another motive is past experience. I could speak to this. Like I went and donated blood like 2 or 3 years ago, and the person at the Red Cross, or I think it was the Red Cross, I think she missed my vein like 4 or 5 times, and I ended up like passing out in the van, right? And I was like, I'm never going back there again. Like that was the worst experience of all time. But it could also be converse. People have an incredible experience. And then they choose to actually go back in time to time again for more routine visits. So, And then the other side of it is physician choice. And I think this is really important, is what makes a patient choose one doctor over the other. And so these are some of the common things that we see, which is, hey, I'm already seeing this physician. I like him, I'm going to stick with him. Great. There's the referral. You go to a PCP refers you out to XYZ, and then that's the physician you go and see. So it's not, there's still choice in it, but it's more of, hey, this is what I was referred to, and I'm just going to go see that physician. There's recommended, and this is one that is actually significantly powerful. And I'll in the next slide I'll share why, which is, when people go and you talk to your friend, you talk to your relative, you talk to your uncle, and whoever it is, and they say, hey, you need to go see X, Y, and Z for your health condition. those types of word of mouth recommendations hold a significant value within that person receiving it. And so those are incredibly, when you look at a scale of like, how do I rate, from a referral standpoint, word of mouth is by far the number one. And then there's research online, people going online, the ZocDocs, health grades, things like that. Another reason is for proximity. I go to this doctor because they're close to my house. And then this another one is friendly staff. I can't tell you how odd this is, but people will continuously go back to the same doctor time and time again, simply because the staff knows them and they're friendly. And then the other two are one's cultural. Cultural could be, we see this a lot in the Jewish community. Jewish community tends to stick with a Jewish doctor. And then availability, another big one. Hey, who's the soonest person that can see me? And so these are a lot of drawing factors. One, from am I ready to seek care, to two, I'm ready to take action. How can I go find a physician to actually help me? And so one thing I thought was interesting is as I was going through this process of starting Patient Partner, I looked at other industries. What do other industries, what percentages or metrics are out there? Mm-hmm. And what I thought was interesting is 81% of consumers, and this stays true in healthcare, look online. They always do research online. Mm-hmm. But word of mouth referrals is number one. It has 92% of consumers trusting word of mouth referrals over any other modality. Mm-hmm. So people trust the people that they know, and they will go and take action on that. And then I look at, so these are two that I look at frequently, which is gyms, out of all things. So if you look at the gyms are always doing these promo, like invite your friend, they get a month free, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. The reason why is a person's 77% higher chance of actually signing up for a gym if their friend's there. And then they have a 49% less chance of actually ending the membership if their friends are members as well. So it's this really tight, this idea of community, right? You really want to create a community within gym, and that's what a lot of gyms try to do. And then you look at real estate. This one I think is fascinating, which is within a broker, almost 90% of people will actually refer whoever their agent was to their friends, because they had an incredible experience. They helped get top dollar on their house, whatever it is. And then conversely, agents do the same thing. As agent was trying to win new business, they'll call on their past clients to say, hey, can you talk to this person to explain how lovely of an agent I was, how simple it was to work with me, things like that. And so basically they're taking these past clients and leveraging to win new business. And so a lot of the reason why I'm like kind of leading into this is ultimately the thought process behind Patient Partner, which is, why don't we give prospective patients the ability to connect with one another, and so that they can learn from one another? It's kind of a simple
ask, and I've not needed a service like yours, mercifully, yet in my life. Don't you have competitors in this space? I have to imagine that there's some kind of med this or that has a head start on you, funding, trying to build community, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there's I kind of bucket them in different categories. So there's companies like, there's Patients Like Me. I think they got acquired by United Healthcare a couple of years ago, but that was a massive company that was revolved around patient communities. I go to Patients Like Me, I create an account, and I say I have COPD. Mm-hmm. You dropped in the COPD group of all of these patients who have COPD. Mm-hmm. There's an app called The Mighty, does something very, very similar. It's all app based, but basically you list your health conditions and then you get put into various communities revolving around that. Mm-hmm. And where we took a different approach was, and not only that, Joe, Facebook groups are huge, right? You can go join a knee replacement Facebook group and there's, 50, 60, 70, 8,000 people in there.
And are you going to tell me one of the problems with that is you can't geolocate the community? So I'm talking about COPD, but I'm in Switzerland, so that's not going to help me.
So not necessarily, but there's a piece of it that does correlate to that. But the thing that we see a lot is people will join these communities and, let's say they post a question, they'll get 80, 90 responses. And we hear a lot is you actually leave more confused than when you started, because you get 80 to 90 different responses saying, do this, do that, and you don't know who to listen to.
Personally, I'm surprised that the number of responses is that high. Second, I'm thinking that the people who are most invested, there's probably an inverse, well, this is bad, but it's my bias. I'm thinking there's an inverse relationship by the amount spoken and the knowledge of the people doing the speaking.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about it like, who do I, like you said, they're more confused.
Yeah. So that's what you're alluding to is spot on, which is how do I trust the person that's actually delivering this information? How do I know they actually have this? Like, there's a bit of how do I actually know this person actually has the health condition, right?
Mhm. It might just be lonely.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So our approach to that was a little different, which is instead of giving you 100 voices that could come in and share what they think you should do or give you some sort of advice, our approach was, I want to know who Joe is. I need to know a lot about you. And so once I know more and more about you, I'm able to connect you with somebody incredibly similar to you.
Now you're using pronouns, let me ask you, when you know something about me, are you saying when your company
Yes, correct.
evaluates a human being's knowledge of a category, you decide whether or not they can be a moderator of a group?
So, let me, not necessarily, let me take it back a step. So let's say you come to patient partner and you are exploring, I don't know, a knee replacement, whatever it is, right?
Okay.
The first thing that we do as a business is we send you through a pretty lengthy questionnaire. We got to know who Joe is, right? And so when we send you through this questionnaire, we pillar our questions into 3 categories. One, we have to know why are you here from a health perspective? What is your health condition? What symptoms are you experiencing? Things like that. The second is personal. I want to know what makes you you. Like, what hobbies do you enjoy? How many kids do you have? What's your activity level? Things like that. And then the third piece of it is psychological. What is your biggest concerns? What are your biggest fears? What's been holding you back? Why are you here? Right. And so a lot of this is really kind of triggered to when we go through that.
You can see my screen now, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Do that one. Go ahead, please continue.
So the goal of all of this is we want to make sure that we match you with somebody similar to you. And when we do that, the goal is like when you have that conversation with this mentor, we want you to feel absolutely comfortable feeling that like you can ask this person anything you want and hopefully be able to get the answers that you need. And then the other side of it too is we also cater to the physician side. So every one of our mentors is tied to a physician on our platform. And so when a patient goes in and connects with a mentor and they connect with Betty and they have that experience, and Betty, is then associated with Dr. Smith, we make sure that Dr. Smith is in your area so that the likelihood of you going to see Dr. Smith is relatively high.
Let me talk to you about Robert C.
Sure.
So I've said that I have back problems, and I just gave you my basic name and birth date. And Robert C. has been assigned my mentor.
Correct.
And I mean, I can find out about him, I guess, or I can send him a message, but I'm looking to understand why would I send him a message? I'm not really clear, but tell me about Robert. When he came here, what was Robert's motive?
So when we like every mentor
more here. So it says read more, but there's nothing more. So I really don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Robert's real motive is he went through an experience and he wants to share his story. And being able to, he's basically altruistic at heart. That's really what is like why he does it. He doesn't get paid. He's truly a volunteer. There is a donation piece that we do on our end, which is every time a mentor connects with somebody, we donate to a charity that they support. So there is a element of giving back. But I mean, the goal is we never wanted mentors to have any sort of financial incentive. If you have a financial incentive with a mentor, it could lead them down a road that really is it could be more thought of as like there's an agenda with that conversation rather than I just want to learn from you. So we wanted to make sure that the mentors were staying volunteers.
Please continue.
Yeah. And so anyways, that is, I mean, I feel like I kind of got a little off track here from the actual presentation.
And I tend to do that to people, sorry. Go ahead, take the screen back, show us your slides, and I'll just type over here. I'm really clueless about where money is for you.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look as though I'm going to be paying anything, and you're not. Robert's not getting any money, but you've intimated that you're going to donate to Robert's favorite charity for helping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the surgeon paying? Is this an advertising model? What?
I mean, I could totally deviate from this and just talk about the business model.
I've done. No, go ahead. Take us through the next slide. I'm terrible.
So, but I mean, that's kind of ultimately, from this idea of giving people the ability to connect with somebody, that's the concept behind patient partner. And ultimately how it works is whenever we work with a physician, they basically nominate their past patients to become mentors. Those mentors are then basically their representatives on the platform. And then what doctors will do is doctors will ultimately utilize this in clinic with new patients, give patients the ability to go and connect with some of their past patients. And when you make those connections, what ultimately happens is that you take a patient who maybe is on the fence, maybe they're not ready to move forward, whatever the case is, and you get them incredibly inspired and motivated, and that makes them very proactive. And so, kind of speaking to the results of what a connection really does, it alleviates concerns for patients. A lot of patients are nervous about a therapy, about a procedure, whatever that is. How can we basically eliminate those fears and concerns that would potentially be a hurdle for them for moving forward? And then time efficiencies. I think we can all speak to this and all know this, like time with doctors is going down. How can we give them an additional resource and give patients an additional resource that even when they leave the doctor's office, they have somebody to speak to and maybe ask, more experienced questions rather than health related questions. And a lot of it is also revolved around retention too. I mean, as a physician, you're always wanting to make sure that your patient population is sticking with you. And how can I differentiate myself? How can I give my patients something that they can basically come back to for routine usage whenever they want to, and be able to have that readily available? And then the last is patient champions. I mean, you have these mentors, and these mentors are basically advocating on behalf of your practice. And they are really, I mean, they're like these spokespeople in a sense. And the way our system works is, as Joe, kind of similar to what Joe went through, when patients go through and they connect with a mentor and they have that conversation, let's say they move forward, we have a drip style campaign within our platform that basically helps elect that patient to become a mentor about 3-4 months later. So we have this natural organic loop of growing mentors for your practice. And ultimately, the goal is we want this massive group. This massive group will ultimately lead to more business for you as a physician. So these are some of the measurements that we typically see. Is when we talk about conversion rate, it's conversion rate of when a patient comes in to see you, what's the likelihood of that patient moving forward with some kind of treatment? And for the most part, a physician will be standard right around 20%. When they actually implement patient partner, we're seeing that number get up to about 30-40%, simply just by utilizing your past patients to help new patients feel more comfortable to move forward. Mm-hmm. And then the next piece is revolved around patient satisfaction. So right on average, like most patients are around a 70% satisfaction with any sort of healthcare experience. Our patients, when they go through this, we receive roughly around a 91% satisfaction rate. So a massive increase. Patients are really excited to have this type of service available. And so ultimately, from a high level, we increase conversion roughly around 35%. These numbers right here are very different per practice, but on average, what we typically see is we save around 75 hours a year.
What's the source of the savings?
So the source
convince is hard, and you make an easier sale.
No, the source of the savings is how long. So let's say Dr. Joe has 10 mentors, and we basically look at the length of time of all of those conversations. And our thought process was, if these patients weren't asking these mentors, they'd probably be calling your office back. And so it's staff time. It's somebody answering the phone, making sure that, whatever their patient is going through, that they can get responded to. And so that is generally how we track the hours saved. And then we also track the decrease in time to treatment. So from that first consultation to actually getting treatment, what's the typical time frame that you guys see versus when patient partner is implemented, what does that new time look like? And so to give you like a little bit of a case study, this is a orthopedic practice that we work with here in Southern California. Their average consult conversion rate was around 23%. The average time to surgery was roughly around 7 weeks. And then this was more anecdotal, but it was, the average time spent on personal questions within consultations. And they said about a third of the The time is revolved around, personal questions. How do I prepare my house? What is, when can I go back to work? Things like that. And then after they've implemented patient partner, they saw an increase in conversion rate and got it up to 31%. They decreased the time from consult to surgery by 2 weeks. And their monthly ROI, because our business is revolved around subscription, was about roughly around 488%. So they saw a massive ROI, and they're able to really save a ton of time and increase conversion within within their practice, making things more efficient. And so I know I talked about the physician side, but I want to speak to how we actually work with industry, because this is by far our biggest channel as far as new business goes. Is we work with massive med device companies and massive pharmaceutical companies. And what they do is these companies are looking for ways to basically help all of their physician customers become more efficient. And they basically take our platform and then they sponsor it for their customers. So what I just walked you through, a company like, I'm just going to use a random name. Let's say Stryker says, I want to give patient partner to all 500 of our physicians who use our knee replacements. I want these patients to have a better education involved, how much, how beneficial a knee replacement could be for them and things like that. And so they basically sponsor and pay for all of their doctors to basically have access to patient partner. Pharmaceutical industry does the same thing. I'm going to pause. Any questions?
There are some. Kevin, you want to ask yours?
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you're looking at onboarding patients, if you kind of have qualifying questions to optimize that match between patient and the mentor. And the context that, why I ask is I'm actually involved with a mental health practice, and that's kind of a key part of the online onboarding process for the practice to kind of match the patients with the clinicians, where patients have preference for, male, female, age of clinician, just somebody they're more comfortable talking to, depending on what the issue is.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Right now, we're working through working with a client, one of our clients, and it's really revolved around the physician selection. It gets a little, truthfully, it gets a little complicated when we get down to a level of granularity that's really hard to accomplish. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say we have all of these preferences that we ask a patient on what type of physician they're looking for. We need to make sure that we have the output for that. And so what we do within these decision-making trees is we put a lot of weights on questions that I think are really important. Like one is which insurance do you have, and being able to make sure that you stay within your network. I think that has a significantly higher weight than, what gender preference do you want in a physician? But the perception is different. What I mean by that is, if a patient goes through this and they say United Healthcare, that's just like, yep, okay, United Healthcare. And if they say, I want a female doctor, but we don't have a female doctor that takes United, and when we show a male doctor, these patients are like, whoa, I asked for a female doctor. Why did you give me a male doctor? And so you need to make sure that whatever preferences you're asking within these questionnaires, is that you have plenty of output on the other end so that you can fulfill those. Because when a patient says that they want one thing over all the others, they're expecting to get that on the other end. And if you can't deliver that, you're going to deliver a poor experience. And so we actually have omitted questions like that if we don't have.
Gunjan, you had something?
Well, I just wondered, George, what kind of privacy protection the patient has. Do you share the information that they have, the detailed questionnaire, with the physician? Do you share it with the device makers in any personally identifiable form?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So actually, all of our clients have this dashboard that they log into when they sign up with us, and they're able to track metrics of basically how everything is running and going. Within that, we do have a tab called Patient Demographics, in which they do have access to this information on basically how patients answer these questions. We de-identify everything so that they don't get it from an actual like person by person standpoint. But what I do think is fascinating is, we get thousands of patients to go through these questionnaires for our clients, and there's, and then we work with our clients to help formulate questions within the questionnaire that they're trying to gather data on. And it is very, very meaningful and impactful for our clients to have access to that type of data. And we do it in a very kind of fun and digestible way. And so, but to answer your question, yes, we do share that with them. We make sure it's de-identified and it's not tied to any certain member within the actual group. So they can't say, oh, patient 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's patient 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So I imagine this would be a great source of market research for companies such as Stryker or Arthrex. Or...
Oh, absolutely, completely. Yeah, it is a huge value add that we part of our business prop. These companies look at it and they're like, this is data that we've always wanted to have, and the fact that we can help curate it and get the data that we want is even better. So you're absolutely right.
I'm hearing you say that, and my mind is screaming, yes, if you have scale. Are you comfortable at this point in your journey to share any kind of numbers you have of patients, mentors, physicians, paying customers? Is a customer exclusively a physician who chooses to have a shingle on your site?
So we have to date, it fluctuates, but I think we're teetering right around 500 mentors. And from a patient membership standpoint, we're about 25,000 now, and
I just signed up today and told you my name and my birthday. Am I among your 25,001?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, because I've given you nothing, and I'm looking around a bit, and I don't, I just clicked on something that said, "Oh, you want to show us the last slide?" Because then I'll just show you what
sure. Well, no, this is a thank you slide.
Okay.
But Joe, the differences between the process that you went through and something that our clients go through is very different. So the free version, if you just came onto patientpartner.com and you wanted to join, and you really had no, there's no direction or no, there is no leading driver to patient partner, then you're going to go through a very standard flow and we'll just drop you into the community. If you're with one of our clients, we're sending you a very different and curated experience. And the reason why we do that is we want to make sure that, like, if a patient comes from Dr. Smith's office, that we go and send them through an experience that's going to connect them with Dr. Smith's mentors. Whereas you went through a very, you're just a person that came onto our website and was able to join. Right. And a lot of those other communities are actually very isolated. So like in the situation within Stryker community is isolated. So you won't actually be able to see the Stryker community. So there is an element in which there is a exclusivity within that community for our clients.
Okay. I'll spend very little time on this. I'll just say that what I did is I approached this as I have back pain.
Yeah.
I saw that there was a mentor. I wrote him a question that I'm sure he can't really answer, not because I was trying to be tricky. I just said, Robert, I have persistent back pain in my lumbar region. I know I should sit up straight and exercise, but can you advise on any procedures I might consider? This guy, I mean, he has an active lifestyle. He had sciatica and a herniated disc. What is he, what's he going to say? But I also don't, you say there's this community and that community. The reason I'm really struggling is a decade ago when I inherited the medical devices group, and I began to see some of the unhelpful choices that LinkedIn was making. For a moment in time, I thought, shit, I don't need them. I'll go create my own community of these people and that people. And immediately I was struck with the chicken and egg difficulty of, why should they come unless there are people answering the questions? Well, why should I answer questions if I don't know how, this smart people and people asking and matching people. And, I'm really struggling with how do you simultaneously get doctors to say, oh, wow, there's such value here. Tell me about your patient community, and the patient community coming in, right now, I went ahead and I looked to see who on earth could maybe help me. And it said, find a doctor. And it gave me one doctor, and I hit see all doctors, get started. And, this is the same thing I answered before. Now they're asking me for my insurance. I'm not ready to, start giving that information.
Joe, I think you're misunderstanding our business problem.
I think I am.
Yeah. So where you're getting tied up with is this idea of a community and like almost like a Facebook, LinkedIn style offering, which is sure that's an element of it, and that is an element of which we think is important, because being able to have that community where patients can come back to routinely is I think a driving factor. But the real value and the reason why people pay for us is not because they have a community, it's because they're able to connect prospective patient with their past patient, because they know when they do that, the likelihood of that prospective patient to move forward goes up dramatically.
I get that.
Conversion tool. That's
But
what it is.
now how do you get that link? I mean, how do you need 3 people for that to work? I need to be in your geography. You have to have had a patient in the past who's willing to be a mentor. And you have to buy into the idea that, I mean, you still haven't told me who's paying you. I imagine the physician.
So I'll answer your first question. I'll go through it. When we work with a physician will go into their past patients, like their Rolodex of past patients, and then they'll nominate people to become mentors.
I see.
So that's where we get the mentor base from. And then we have built our software to basically help prospective patients. So a new patient goes in to see this doctor.
Mhm.
Our software then kicks in, sends everything from email campaigns to text campaigns to that patient saying, hey, we have these past patients here that can help you go through this journey if you want. And so
Okay.
that is the invitation. And from there, if patients choose to make that connection, fantastic. Some choose not to, which is totally fine. But the people who choose to go and make that connection, we see that there's a significantly higher output on the other end of that patient than going, I'm ready for surgery. Please book me for a procedure, X, Y, and Z.
May I paraphrase what I heard you say?
Sure.
Quickly. You approach a doctor, you say, doctor, go through your past patients, find a dozen that you think would represent you well, we'll engage them and perhaps get them on here. Fine. Now, I have a need. First, how do I find out about you? That's building awareness and such. But how then, have I said I'm considering going to Dr. Ed Capabianca, and I see if he's on your network, and if so, I see who are former patients of his that I can talk to. So I have a piece of information. I already am looking into Eddie as my doctor.
So we are not a lead generating avenue for physicians. That's not, we don't run all these ads and try to get patients and then send patients to doctors. The reason why we do what we do is that physicians on average will convert 20% of the new patients that come see them. So
I know you said
that go to them on average. There's some that teeter, but 80% of these patients will either say, "Oh, it's not the right time. I'm going to go see somebody else," whatever the case is.
I don't know why my camera went off. Sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. And our business prop is, how can we help you capture more of that 80% and help you, you're already spending time with these people. How can we help you convert at a higher level? And one of our, there's several ways that you can do that. Our proposal is, let's use your past patients to help new patients understand this.
I understand that's what you want to do. I'm struggling with how people enter the system and how there's money in it for you.
Yeah.
And how matches are made. Dr. Ed,
if I may, by the way, I'm not a doctor.
play one on TV.
It's what your business sounds like to me, George, a little bit is go way back when a company called Snyder Communications. I don't know if anybody's heard of them, but a guy named Dan Snyder, he did this thing called wall boards in doctors' offices. These are literally sort of posters, big, not quite billboard size. And what he did is he got paid by drug companies or device companies to basically advertise on those walls. While people were waiting in doctors' offices, they would see information and then maybe be prompted to ask the doctor, hey, what about this thing I just saw? Yours seems to me a web-based, more dynamic and able to be sort of customized for people at their homes, but a similar sort of educational tool. Am I way off here?
I mean, there's an element of that. I mean, we don't sell
Yeah.
advertising space like that. That's not our business model. Everything we do is on a
Mhm.
subscription basis. But I mean,
Well, I'm still therefore a bit confused as Joe is
Okay.
how you get paid. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
And Jonathan, if you would come off mute, you wrote a comment that I think would help things for me. You said, well, go ahead and share what you said.
Oh, I was just suggesting that I think it would be very helpful to show where you are on the marketing funnel. So not in the beginning of it, trying to get leads and all these companies that are promising lead generation and but you're actually closer to the closing side where maybe doctors are becoming less and less heavy-handed about prescriptive insistence. And because they want that satisfaction factor, they want people to basically choose to do the procedure rather than being prescribed to do the procedure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, truthfully, guys, if I knew this was going to be a pitch on patient partner, I would have done the entire sales deck for you guys. But
I'm just trying to walk away with the value prop and how it
yeah,
works.
no, I invite this stuff. I mean, I love talking about the business that we have. But if I were to try to simply explain this concept, and John, I think you're spot on. It's you have like top of the funnel, which is patients out in the ether, and that's where companies like Healthgrades and ZocDoc live, right? I go there, type in health condition, find a doctor, book a time. Where we live is actually further down the funnel, which is I've actually already selected a doctor and I am now going to see that doctor. And when I walk into that first, consultation and I meet with that doctor, when I leave that consultation, our software connected to their practice sends out everything from email campaigns to text message campaigns to that patient saying, thank you so much for coming in today. If you have additional questions, feel free to talk to my past patients. They're here ready for you to communicate with. And that is where we basically get that influx of new patients coming into patient partner, which is they're already been into the office of our physician who works with us. And we send them an invitation because we know their email address and their phone number because they're already into that physician's system.
George, if I may, you said, if I had known this was going to be a this or a that, I would have this or that. May I humbly suggest what you just said in the last 45 seconds would have saved me a shit ton of confusion.
Yeah.
I would say start there, because now you've told me that after a patient has seen a doctor, the following happens. I had no idea that it was contingent on I've already met a doctor. I think that's what you said. Is it always contingent on I've already met the doctor?
For the most part, yes, absolutely.
For God's sakes, man, start your presentation that way.
Yeah, well, again, I happy that I cleared that up, but that's ultimately what we do. I mean, we take patients, help convert them at a higher level.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm sorry I was so thick that it took me this long and this tone to get there, but.
May I ask another question?
Yes.
George, what's your kind of your exit thoughts on the company? I mean, who would you see yourself being acquired by?
It's kind of a funny topic. I mean, a lot of our clients have actually come to us from an M&A perspective, which is kind of exciting. So we're actually entertaining those right now. But it's tough. I look at, patients like me, I guess, is one example. That was a forced buyout though. If you actually do the research, like they didn't necessarily want to sell, but they had to. A lot of these other companies, I mean, they're selling to insurance-based companies. I can see potentially like a ZocDoc or some sort of like media company having interest in something like this. But I mean, I'm open, but I mean, at the rate of where we're at, I mean, we're approaching, like, I would say EBITDA neutral at this point. And we're growing significantly faster than where we have in the past. So my likelihood of getting there I think is significantly higher. And so at that point, I mean, I can continue running this as much as I want. I'm on no shot clock. So.
On the positive side, George, that guy, Dan Snyder, I mentioned, he sold his company to Havas Communications for $2.1 billion and bought the Washington Redskins, Commanders, and destroyed it. But that's what he did with his billions. So,
I didn't know that the Redskins had a new name.
Oh, yeah, they've had two new names, Joe.
I
They were-
don't follow it, but
They were the Washington football team for the pandemic, basically. And then of all the names that they could have possibly chosen, they chose the Washington Commanders.
Hmm.
And Sue, I know, knows this because she's in the area. We're all disappointed.
I know, and why didn't they use that quarterback to begin with? And why did they take out the second quarterback? He was good.
I didn't mean to devolve this into a beasting session of.
Oh, no, I watched every game. This is actually the best year they've had in years, so. Go
Yeah,
Commanders.
that's mostly because he's selling, I think, isn't that right?
Yeah, maybe to Matthew McConaughey or, I don't know.
George, I'm grateful that you took a flyer and spent time with us because it was ambiguous and it certainly, I took you in lots of different places, but I understand your value prop. And I think you've educated a few folks that might have a connection or something that can help you along the way. The recording will be available. You can use it as you see fit. And you're in San Diego. We'll be in San Diego in April. So perhaps at a minimum, you can consider coming to the keynote. Mauricio Vecchione will be our keynote on Tuesday night, April 11th at the Wyndham Bayside. We can meet you in person. I expect Alyssa will be there and it would be nice to shake a hand.
Cool. Yeah. Just send me whatever information. I'd love to see if I can make it.
I'll do it.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Next week, Karen Deep is going to talk to us about quality management systems. The following, Rick is going to talk to us about design for manufacturability. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, George.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.